Thank you very much for coming, everybody, from wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And thanks for coming to the first of our webinars this year. And today we're going to be talking about talent transformation. Talent, a phrase, a word that you're hearing talked about all the time. And it's putting learning into a different context. But I would like to join it back up with learning today and talk about the role of learning in the talent transformation story, in our drive to develop, engage, retain our people. I'm going to show you a quick hi everybody. Lisa's just saying I'm good to go. Welcome everyone. I'm going to today be showing you a quick model for talking about talent, considering the role of learning in talent, and how we can begin to open up that story, if you like. And then I will be looking at some of the outputs from a workshop we ran in September, which I think you'll all find really, really interesting. And then finally, I'm going to focus on one thing that seemed to come up as a very a popular topic around this whole area, which was specifically onboarding. So if anybody could just write in the questions box whether you can hear me, and I can double check that you're getting me speaking right now, I'd be really, really grateful. Just so that I get some feedback. So I will keep going. Thank you, everybody. Sometimes it feels like you're slightly on your own in this situation. So very, very good. As I say, write your name write your questions in the questions box, and we will. I'll attempt to answer them. So my name's Andrew. I'm head of strategy at GP Learning Experience. Now, for those of you that are used to seeing me in a Leo context, well, welcome to GP Learning Experience. Who are we? As many of you will know, GP Strategies has become part of Learning Technologies Group, and the Leo team that you knew is now known as GP Strategies Learning Experience. And we've grown hugely in our reach and ability because we've joined up with our colleagues in GP all over the world, which is extremely exciting. And so this is the first webinar we've done under this new identity, if you like, as part of this new organization. And why learning experience? Because we want to reflect the whole different world of learning that we work in. And learning is a multi-touch point business area where we are responsible for connecting with our learners in so many different ways beyond the traditional courses, whether they were digital or instructor-led. And so to reflect that new world of learning, we are really talking about ourselves as learning experience experts. And we're part of GP Strategies, a very large and interesting organization, and which really is focused on talent transformation. So we have consulting, we have the technologies within Learning Technologies Group, and top right here in the learning services area, you can see we have modern learning strategies, content, and learning experiences, and that is where our team sits. And we're focused very much around this talent story. We would describe that as attracting, developing, engaging, retaining talent, enabling transformation through people, always. A really exciting area. And in our team, learning experience, what do we do? Well, trying to distill that down is so hard when you have such a breadth of different projects and engagements with different customers. But we are learning strategists, we are learning content creators, and we are learning experience creators. Ultimately, we're about driving behavior change, transforming business performance. We're also measurement experts, and that's something I will mention later. So why talent? Why do we find ourselves talking about talent so much now? Well, certainly last year, there was a massive um, uh, uh, lot of discussion around what might be called the coming capability crisis. My colleague Carrie Williard in GP has talked about it, and if you follow her on Twitter, you'll see her discussing this a lot, certainly during last year. So what we heard in both the US and the UK is that in certain areas, businesses were under deep stresses and challenges driven by shortfalls in employees in certain sectors. For instance, 1.2 million employee shortage in nurses in the US, and truckers there on the right, expecting an 80,000 driver shortage last year at the American Trucking Association, and the changing face of business driving some of these challenges as well. And it's the same in the UK. 60% of companies saying that they had a coming capability crisis, and certainly some sectors really feeling the strain. So in terms of driving business success, or at least enabling businesses to continue with what they're doing, the need to focus back on the people you need for the future is hugely important. And of course, us as learners are brought into that conversation, thank goodness. But the phrase, as you will all be so fully aware, is a complex one, because it means, as far as I am concerned, it means a different thing to whoever you're talking to. So I have tried to find a way of really opening up where this conversation starts. And colleagues at Deloitte a few years ago, who were talking about the future of work and workers, had this sort of 3-point construct which to look at work of the future: the work, the worker, the work environment. And I thought I'd try it out today, try and reuse this in the context of what we're talking about. Nicola has said, Richard has said, will these slides be made available? Absolutely, yes, they will. We'll send out a set of these after this webinar when we get back in touch with you. Another way of talking about the work environment, because that sometimes feels very kind of functional in terms of its terminology, might be the job to be done, the people, and the context in which they're working. And I think that's quite an interesting way of then turning around and going, okay, learning, those of us who are working in learning, where can we touch? Where is our responsibility, if you like, in any of these three areas? And that's what I'd like to just talk about for a couple of minutes. So first of all, looking at the job to be done. So the world of work is changing fast. Even today, on the news this morning in the UK, a lot of really exciting discussion about the use of AI by Microsoft. We know that is changing the workplace hugely, chatbots and so on, mechanization, logistics, geographical movements of people. All these things are shifting the way work is changing, and undoubtedly technology is having a huge part of that story. How does learning work into that area? Well, our role, I think, in L&D, and what I'm saying here, by the way, just my kind of immediate thoughts are, as we are operating at the front line of and we have frontline sight of work practices shifting, and needs shifting in organizations, because we're responding to our organization and the people shifts in our organization. And learning can be an enabling force in this context. So we can see the change, we can react to the change. If we're doing our job right in L&D, we're reacting to the changes required all the time. We can support the people and the skills transformations in the context of that shift. Very often there's a cultural transformation around the edges of that as well. And we can both be engaging with the learners in that context, but also taking back the story to other components of the wider business. L&D often has such a close relationship with managers, with the learners, and a direct connection with the center of the business, that conversation can happen both ways. Obviously, learning has an important task in retaining talent and engaging learners, in making sure we can respond to our people's needs and retain them. And that's all part of the sort of talent mobility story, which I'll talk about too. And indeed, of what people services, if you like, in organizations very much need to engage with hiring the right people for the future, and learning has an absolute important role in that area, indeed in bringing them in, as I'll talk about later, and getting them optimally up to speed in the context of onboarding. What about the work environment? Well, it's interesting that our role has shifted, I think, in the 20 years I've been in this sector, very much to one where we are much more responsible for the kind of environment that people are working in and supporting their performance and performance behaviors through tools, through systems, through connecting learners with one another to tackle certain problems, to connecting learners with their managers and with experts in organizations. All of this enables people to perform, better. So our role as trainers, I think, has shifted hugely, and we are much more part of, enabling people to do their job right. And it's become much more of a just-in-time role as learners. And recently we've been involved in shifting and supporting that shift in work practices, such as hybrid learning. And a lot of our work is about driving people-focused initiatives, if you like, and supporting learners in many, many different ways, from wellness to enabling diversity of thinking and so many other areas of ensuring that people are sort of bringing their best selves to work. And then the third area there, very much about the worker. And this is, an area that learning has been focused on forever, in a sense, because it's directly about people. It's about building the performance behaviors for success, and that for us as learning people is business as usual. It's about growing people, growing their skills, and building their ability to make new decisions, being confident in their roles, and engaging them in the changing face of our business. Nowadays, it's much more about driving people pathways. It's about giving people clear vision ahead of themselves, and recruiting, bringing people into the business, and also what we call right through to as they leave the business, and ensuring that they're engaged so much that maybe they'll come back. I love the phrase boomerangs, which is something that people are talking about much more, is keep your people engaged. They will leave, but they'll come back because they've had a growing experience with you, which is lovely. And again, as we engage with our people, it's about ensuring that they are presenting their best selves to the organization. I heard a lovely phrase the other day from Gartner, which is the opposite of quiet quiet resigning. It was that the expression quiet resignation, where people under deep stress kind of step back into their core role and don't engage with their business. Effectively, they're sort of leaving the business but staying in it at the same time. And in this article recently, I heard the need for us to bring people back in, i.e. quiet hiring, which is lovely, a lovely phrase. Engage our people so much that they're beginning to step back into the organization after the hard times, back in and engage in other ways. And ultimately, we're about measuring and reporting value too. So just a reminder to put any questions you have. Yes, Balvi, quiet quitting, of course. So quiet hiring, the opposite of quiet quitting. So I just wanted to give you a very quick bit of feedback from a workshop we ran in September on this topic, and just show you some of the highlights from that. So we brought together 30 CLOs and senior operatives within the learning sector, representing many different customers of ours, and we were talking about talent transformation touch points. And I just wanted to talk to you very quickly about some of the things we got. So as I've said, talent transformation, when we asked what talent was all about, as I said, talent means something different to everybody. We got a really nice set of different stories from people in the room. And these are just some of the sort of headlines, but it's about retaining people. People are saying it's about change, it's about leadership, it's about being flexible. This just really made me realize how much talent means something else to whoever you're talking. And what I wanted to do then was take people and say, okay, well, if this is the broader story, what are the enablers for what we might call talent transformation in a business? We got some really interesting feedback then. We got, the culture of the business, the way communities work, things you'd expect like mentoring and coaching, visible progression, personal development plans. So things that are quite functional and practical. A clear career path matrix, very similar to visible progression, sense of well-being, communication, transparency, and also a nice one that came onto the dashboard really at the workshop, which is passion projects. I'll come to that in a second. Out of the workshop, we pulled 15 core levers that we could explore further, that ranged from onboarding, the career context, progression through businesses, role of the manager, informal learning. What I'd like to know from anybody on this webinar today is, are there any of those things there you see that you particularly would have liked to explore or would like to explore more in a talent context? I'll tell you in a second what the group we were with chose, which 5 they wanted to explore more. But do put into the question panel any of those areas that if you had been there and if you were going to attend one of our future workshops, which we have got a couple coming up, and anybody who wants to attend a virtual workshop, do please tell us. And we will try and make sure you're invited. If you had been at this one, what would you have chosen? Well, we've got onboarding, the manager, the culture change, leadership, capability mapping. Great. So lots of different views, capability mapping coming up, which is really interesting because out of those, the topics that were chosen to explore further were these ones. Key moment upskilling, what you might call, for instance, upskilling to managers effectively, fast, efficiently in organization, or cross-skilling into new important roles that are appearing in an organization. Capability mapping as a kind of foundation, kind of foundation context for all of this conversation, really. Career paths, career context, onboarding, and passion projects. So those were the 5 that we explored. I'll come to onboarding in a short while because that's a particular area of my expertise. But I'll just tell you what came out of the first 4. We talked about, and we have talked about, the visible career path. And it's a topic that we could do a whole webinar on, just on this. Interestingly, enablers were really, there were some nice kind of flags that came up, like showcasing impact, showing how having a visible career path can really affect the way people feel, the way they operate, and feeding that back as a sort of story back into the organization. Technology can support in this, managers' behaviors, and the sort of data behind. Lots of challenges as well. High turnover of people can be a real challenge. Significant skills shifts and change, organizational structure changing, and visibility and awareness of career paths and so on. So I think that it's something that we talk about all the time, and I think that learning are really focusing on this much more as we pull together and engage with the tools, many of the technologies and platforms we have that support a kind of visible career approach. Capability mapping really as a foundation sort of part of all of this. And it, simply put, it's about understanding our people, what they are undertaking right now, what we need in the future, how to deconstruct that into a set of points that we can really work with. And very often we're using personas. We are involving the business and managers in deeply trying to understand what good behaviors and capabilities and competencies are. And there are many different ways of describing all of this. The challenges around this area are many as well, because we're trying to drive ways of describing people, humans, which is a hard thing to do when you are talking about a whole different set of attributes, including things like capacity for change, resilience, agility, and so on, not just the specific skills associated with different roles. And how do you standardize that? How do you standardize capability mapping across a business as well, was something we talked about a lot. Key moment upskilling is something that we will all in the learning context be familiar with, I think. So there were some nice things that came out here. Things like just keeping upskilling always on the agenda, like, for instance, leadership development for all, drives the kind of growth culture, not just putting the pressure on this single moment when people are required to step up into new roles. But if you can seed the growth pathways earlier, then you begin to make that moment of upskill a lot easier. A clear matrices, competency frameworks, the space and time to engage, support in a well-being context, and so on, can all really enable those moments. And of course, leadership and manager support. Challenges, not surprised to see budget, hybrid working, and sadly, no personal development time to engage. Really tough. And then a very nice topic that we discussed was passion projects. So for those who are wondering what we're talking about here, I would describe it as organizations who allow people to take on what you might call gigs or projects outside their normal roles for a short period of time, or a short period of hours a week, or join other projects, or move into another team and then back again, with new responsibilities. And it's the organizations that described this, it was clear to see that they had a maturity of talent mobility, or indeed talent fluidity, way above and beyond many others. And again, it's a topic that I'd love to explore more with many of our customers. So I'm aware that time is really running out. If those of you who need to go, then it's been lovely having you. I'm going to spend a little bit more time just talking you through the four key components of a good onboarding strategy for those who want to stay. The deck will be coming out to everybody, by the way, and I might get to some questions if I have a moment in a short while. So onboarding has come back over and over again in a talent context, and it's definitely something that we are at the very kind of, I keep thinking that the onboarding kind of moment is passing, but it isn't. It seems that the pressure to engage learners fast and build, if you like, high-performing integrated people as quickly and effectively as possible is with us and will remain with us for a long time to come. So I've got four key pointers that have come out of all the onboarding work we've been doing recently. First one is really about thinking about your people in your organization tomorrow and aligning your people with your tomorrow. And that could be about training, learn and developing learning around a particular business imperative, like say sustainability. It could be about new products, new areas of engagement that are going to be really important for your business going forward, like one of our customers here that was creating a new focus around pensions, and so we were involved in developing an academy in that area that was part of the onboarding process. The other thing is that you can set new behaviors at onboarding, behaviors that you can drive for the future. And there are many different areas you could be looking at that. But one of those, from the context of a learning team, is you can set new learning behaviors. You can actually look at what you want people to be like in the context of learning in the future, and you can encourage certain areas. So you can design, for instance, an onboarding program that encourages curiosity and sharing and reflection and so on. And if people are beginning to see that in their first month or weeks of joining, then you're setting them up for a successful future. My second key point is thinking about the journey and not overloading people or indeed underloading them. We often think about good onboarding as a kind of onion skin, where you're starting with something really simple, either before you join or the day you join. And it could be something like this. This was a video that was the first action required by people joining the UK civil service. Click the button, watch the video, and that really was the beginning of your onboarding journey. And it's just a really nice, personal, message from the organization, but it's also kind of setting the scene for how the rest of the onboarding program folds out. And keeping that the beginning of that story really, really tight. So for booking.com, it was who we are, how do we work, how will you work, what else do you need to know? From that point onwards, it can fold out. So what do people need to know when is really important? Think about the blend, think about how you're going to engage the learners. This is point 3. So we worked with our colleagues at Twitter to develop and design a whole new onboarding program for them 18 months ago. And that is a 4-week blended program. You can see it kind of simply laid out here. The different colored dots on the screen, which you may or may not be able to see, represent the green ones are, for instance, online activities and sessions. You have manager activity there, you've got manager check-ins, and so on and so on. And so we were designing these different activities, some of which are community and networking activities, and others are different ways of engaging with the kind of information you need to know at different times during that journey. So everything is blended. We even developed for that a pack that was sent out to new joiners, so that had a physical component as well. And of course, people are now coming back into the office, which is great. Still, we can use digital components like this for pre-joining, perhaps. And we can use things like games to explain strategic components of what a business does. Top left there is energy for an energy business, to explain how the logistics of that business work. We have something we did for Godiva Chocolate on the right, which is about their role in the world of chocolate. And for automotive sales, you can begin to inspire and excite people about aspects of what they're going to be doing as they walk through the door. Finally, consider what people need to know in their first 100 days. We talk about align, deliver, sustain as a core model for how we think about learning journeys. And this applies so importantly to onboarding, because align is a state of mind for new joiners, perhaps before they join, certainly at the early moments in their engagement with an organization, where they're absolute sponges for new information. They're very excited, they're inspired, and you can use that moment to really drive a lot of learning that in a clear moment before they join. And then you're into a delivery phase, which is really about the kind of a lot of highly practical onboarding learning around how to operate within a new business. And then sustaining is moving that into business as usual. We've developed that further, and I won't go into the detail, into sort of pre-joining, perhaps day 1, week 1, month 1, and then a sort of sustained phase. And each of those phases can comfortably drive different topic areas. Very often, like brand culture, it could be in an align component, whereas once you moved into deliver, it's about orientation, compliance, perhaps understanding the systems, processes. And when you move into sustain, it might be more about growth and development, networking, next level business processes. You can use different modes for that. You could use gamification, perhaps more in the align phase. In delivery, it's more about understanding how the application works, and then maybe sustain is more about thinking about how coaching and mentoring works, the manager relationship work. And the channels can be very different as well that you can use. So in pre-joining, it may just be a digital experience. Delivery very different because you are either you have perhaps a learner with you in an office, or you are you have them engaged, for a full time for the first time, and so you can develop hybrid learning packages. And then as you move into sustain, again with coaching and mentoring, perhaps there's more opportunity for live and face-to-face learning experiences. So that was a very quick run through of onboarding. We have so much more in terms of assets on onboarding that you can find on the Leo Learning website, and indeed on the GP Strategies website. So do go and have a look there. And I will have a look at some of these questions. I now know that we're about 7 minutes after time. Thank you everybody who's stayed with us, stayed with me for all of this. Do put up any areas of what I've talked about that particularly interest you, that you'd like me to come back and talk about, and I will pick up on them. As usual, it has been lovely to speak to you. It's been a quick run around some of the things that are going on in our world, and it's been very nice to hopefully trigger some thinking to all of you. I would like to say thank you to Lisa and to Hannah for organising this, and also that the decks and the recording will be coming out to you. So thank you very much. I will attempt to come back to some of you with your questions and answer those, because there's some really lovely questions, but I don't think we have time to cover those right now. Thank you very much all, and look forward to seeing you in the future.